Hey mamas, I'm so glad that you're here. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Mariama. I'm a Christ-following mom of littles and a homeschooling mom who is unashamed to share how the gospel of Jesus Christ transforms our homeschool and how I use homeschooling to disciple my little ones for Christ. I love helping other moms who want to start the homeschooling journey. And I know that there's tons of challenges that you face to starting. So this video is going to be all about how to ditch that school mindset so that you can really enjoy the freedom that comes from homeschooling. One of the biggest mistakes that homeschool moms make, and I made the same mistake when I first started out, was trying to mimic the classroom, whether it was a Montessori classroom, a Waldorf classroom, any type of classroom setting that you're thinking of, or the public school or private school setting. The classroom, that is the first mistake that we tend to make because we think we need a dedicated homeschool room or we need a dedicated homeschool space. And if we don't have it, then we can't start. So I'm going to help you break out of that school mindset that makes you feel like you have to have a classroom. This room that I'm sitting in right now is actually my boy's bedroom. This room could look like a playroom or a homeschool space at any point in the day. We use a modular bed that flips into a couch. It can also turn into a fort, and it can also, just be a lounge area for reading or sleeping, napping. And we have some toys on the side here, like a toy storage bin. As you can see, they have a desk back there. I have some posters on the wall. So at any given time, my kids can be doing activities at this table or they can be playing in this room. But most of the time we do a lot of our hands-on lessons and activities at the dining room table where we eat and read and we do, science experiments and cooking lessons and all kinds of things that happen very naturally throughout the course of our day right at the dining room table. So you do not need a room, a specific space. You do need a place to put things, like you have to have storage. For example, I store things, vertically because we have limited space. So I will use what you see behind me, a tower lamp. This is a lamp at the top, but it has shelving. So we use book bins to store some of our books. I love using carts like the one in the back. That is a utility cart. It could be used anywhere in the house. If I wanted to use it for art supplies, or maybe I want to turn it into a literacy, cart, or a math cart, you can turn it into whatever you want, or you could have multiple carts. They're mobile, so you can move them from room to room. If you are short on space, again, you can get creative with your storage of supplies, and you don't need a ton of stuff. So, oftentimes when we look in the classroom, we see lots of equipment. You see so much in terms of manipulatives, which are like little, hands-on resources that you can use to teach math, early math. So you'll see lots of arts and craft supplies and, things that, even furniture, things that are used for aiding the teacher in managing a large group. You don't need all of that because you just have your little ones, whether you have 1 or 5. You don't need all of the furniture and equipment and all of the resources and supplies that the classroom teacher has. You just need enough for your children. And what I have found over the years is that, especially when you're raising little ones, household supplies, cooking utensils, little things that you have around the house are pretty much all you really need. You can also take your class outside, take your little ones outside and learn in nature and use the outdoors as your classroom and use, sticks and twigs and flowers and rocks as your manipulatives and whatever you're going to use to teach early math or phonics. Or science. You can teach so much by being outdoors. So our lessons mainly happen at the dining room table, but then we take it outside sometimes when the weather is warmer, we spend most of our time outside. So there is no need for a huge space, and there is no need to have, all the furniture and equipment because everything we need is in our home. When I started homeschooling, I thought I needed to replicate the classroom and get a ton of stuff. But the reality is, over the years, I learned that little children thrive with less stuff. It's easier for cleanup for me and for them. And I began to observe my kids and watch them play. And I noticed the things they love to play with the most were open-ended toys like Mega Blocks and Play-Doh and those little connector blocks and STEM toys. So I realized that they didn't need a lot of stuff. They just needed a few items that they really enjoy playing with, and I could also use those items to create lessons with. So less stuff was actually more because it yielded more in terms of playtime, also helping me to teach them important lessons, and it also was easier for us to work together and clean up at the end of a busy day. Another part of the school mindset is this idea that you need to be teaching for 7 to 8 hours a day. It is not something that is needed at all. When kids go to school, they're in a building, right? School, we're calling it school, the school building, but they're there in a building for 7 to 8 hours because they need to be there until you get out of work or somebody can pick them up. And so the reality is they're not learning for 7 to 8 hours, but they are there and they have to be doing something. And what I realize is that you don't have to be doing something for 7 to 8 hours. You don't have to be teaching for 7 to 8 hours. You can literally do about 15 minutes of lessons, hands-on activities with your preschooler, or up to an hour of instruction and lessons and hands-on activities with your kindergartner to first grader, and that is enough. I love this book by Dorinda Wilson. It is called The 4-Hour School Day, and she talks about nurturing littles and planting seeds in the early years all the way up through high school, and shows you how you can literally get an very comprehensive educational experience for the year by just doing from 1 to 4 hours of schooling for the day. That's it. And it sounds shocking at first, but this is really all you need in the early years, 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Some kids will do, short spurts here and there, and they take breaks. But my little ones are now in the K to first grade phase, and all I need is 1 hour with like 3 to 4 breaks, and we're done. And they have more time to play. I have time to do other things, pursue hobbies and other interests, and they absolutely love it, and they're thriving. And most homeschoolers are surpassing the state standards, and their children are surpassing all the expectations by just doing this amount of school every day. And another part of the school mindset that I want to help you ditch today is this idea that your child is behind if they're not on grade level. They need to perform, right along with their peers at or above grade level. If not, they're going to be behind. They're going to get left behind. This idea that their performance is more important than, who they are as a person. And homeschooling is amazing in that it gives you the freedom to let your child blossom at their individual pace. You don't have to follow a grading system. The grading system was never created for your child. It was created with the purpose of in mind that teachers would be able to determine the progress of a whole class of students or an entire school or an entire district. But you are just concerned about your child or your few little ones at home. And so you can teach your children what you feel is appropriate at the right time and give them time to blossom, give them time to, develop that language and those muscles in their fingers before they're, don't push them before they're ready to write. Help them develop those muscles in their mouth and their tongue so that they can speak. When they're ready to speak, they'll speak. A lot of times, doctors and experts will say, well, your child has a speech delay, and they have a delay in walking or doing certain gross motor skill activities, and you're like, oh my goodness, and you start getting all frustrated and anxious, and you're already feeling the anxiety well up because someone's telling you that your child should be doing X by a certain time. Who determines that, right? And there is a relationship between the schools, doctors, experts, all these people. There is a relationship there. That's a whole conversation for a whole different day. But there is a push for kids to do things earlier because it's considered better that they do things earlier. Why? So that they can push them through the system. There's this train that just goes and it never stops. But at home, you can stop the train. and say, we're going to do this at your pace and make learning fun and focus on connection over perfection. Focus on, the joy of learning over grading systems. And there's so much freedom there, so much freedom. Another part of the school mindset is this idea that you need to get the best curriculum for your child, because the curriculum is everything. For teachers, especially in the classroom, the curriculum is the gold standard. And without the curriculum, there literally is nothing, right? There's nothing else. Teachers have to follow a specific grading system. They have to follow a specific plan for the year. They have to follow certain guidelines, and then they have to hit certain markers and certain goals by a certain time. And the curriculum is the backbone. And oftentimes it is like the Bible for the teacher, not for you. It doesn't have to be that way. I am a firm believer in the idea that curriculum is not something you buy, but it is something you teach. And I actually learned that from reading this book called Teaching from Rest by Sarah Mackenzie. This is a must read for any homeschool mom. Doesn't matter what stage you're in. I would definitely pick this up, though, if you're starting out. I wish I bought this book. I heard about this book and knew about it before I started homeschooling, but I got it right when I needed it. So I thank God for that. This is an amazing read. And I'll tell you why, because she really delves into this idea about curriculum being something that we should be using as a guide and not as like the end all be all of all things. Curriculum is not something that we buy, it's something we teach. And so your curriculum could be cooking lessons that you're doing in the kitchen, and you choose meals for the week to teach your children early science and good eating habits, nutrition, and things like that. And healthy foods. And you could also teach early phonics by naming food items and all of that. That could be your curriculum. It doesn't have to be a printed resource. So that's number one. Number two, you can stop whenever you want to and switch things up. You don't have to follow this specific plan for the entire year. If it's not working, you stop and you switch things up and you pivot when you need to. That's the joy of homeschooling. So in the early years, that looks like, having a simple morning routine and, eating breakfast and talking about God, reading the Bible together, and then doing some hands-on activities. Maybe you read some books together, you take a nature walk, maybe you do a science experiment in the kitchen with some kitchen science or something like that. And things like that. That could be your curriculum. Or maybe you decide you want to have a list of activities that your kids are going to love based on their interests. That could be your curriculum. You don't have to buy a printed resource for every single subject. You don't have to teach all the subjects at once. You can focus on 2 subjects for the year. If you want, you could have a kindergarten or first grader focusing on math and phonics for the entire year. Just math and phonics. So the curriculum really is what you make it. It's the snippets from your lifestyle. It's the books you read, it's the foods you eat, it's everything. It does not have to be a printed resource. You don't have to buy the fanciest, most expensive, well-touted curriculum out there. Any printed resources you could get for free at this stage. You don't have to buy anything. So that's the beauty of homeschooling. It's such a savings there. And I highly recommend that you pick up this book, Teaching from Rest, because she talks a lot about, creating rhythms and routines for your family. And also, ways to simplify curriculum, whether you're buying printed resources or making your own lesson plans, but she talks all about that in the book. So that's a great read for you. And lastly, ditching the school mindset also means that you have to believe that you are your child's primary teacher. Proverbs 22:6 is my anthem as a homeschool mom. Train up the child in the way that he should go, and when he gets older, he will not depart from it. You have been given a God-given right and a command to train your children up in the ways of the Lord. And that includes teaching them everything else that they need to know. Now, do you have to teach them math all the way through high school? No, you could get help, and there's resources out there. So being a homeschool mom doesn't mean that you're teaching your child every single thing, but you are their primary teacher, especially for teaching them things, spiritual things, and you are the one that's in charge of their education. You decide what they learn and when. You decide what classes they can take online. You decide when you're going to expose them to screens. You decide, when you're going to expose them to certain topics. As their primary teacher, you're not necessarily teaching all the subjects, but you're the gatekeeper. You're the one that decides when they learn what and how they learn it and who's going to instruct them and what settings you're going to put them in and what kids they're going to be around. And you're the one that makes all those decisions, not the government. And that's the difference. The government wants you to think that you are not your child's primary teacher. They want you to think that they gave you the right to parent by giving you a birth certificate and putting your name on it. They want you to think that, you don't have what it takes to educate your child, let alone make the right decisions for your child about their education. And they are far from being correct on that. God has already given you a command to train your children in the ways of the Lord. And he's also said that whatever you need, he will supply it. All of your needs will be provided when you pray in faith and believe and ask God for help, and what you need, he will provide. You bring to him what you have, an open heart and open hands and a willing heart, and he will provide everything you need for your homeschool journey. So I am hoping and praying that whatever I said today was helpful and that you will, begin to shed that school mindset. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but just having that confidence that you can do this, that you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength, that confidence is going to take you far. There's going to be times where you're wondering and you're thinking, maybe I'm not doing enough. There are going to be times where you feel inadequate, but I want you to remember what the word of God says. You can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. You are your child's primary teacher. You are called to do this for this generation. And so I want to leave you with that and be encouraged. I am coming out with a digital resource to help moms start the homeschool journey, and I will share more about that in a future video. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment below, like this video, and consider subscribing and check out some of the other videos I have.